discussion. Let me invite the panelists to make their way on up here. What we're going to be talking about, the title of this is Charting the Course for Using Local to Drive Value for Your Brands. So we've got an awesome collection of people here to help us out. I just want to give a small shout out again to a couple of the people that will be on this panel. John Paul Rexing from ESPN Hometown, I acknowledged earlier, as one of our program advisors who has been fabulous in helping us conceive and execute on the notion behind this conference. So John Paul, thank you very much. And Warren Kay is with Under Armour. He did a stint with us. He was our executive in residence for a bit, which we very much appreciated. And as Warren has discovered, you can't get too far away from us. So we really appreciate your joining us. And then we have, with John Paul, we have Frank Nakano, they're going to be talking about a case study.
John Paul and I don't have photos up there.
Wow. Okay.
Sorry, I'm kidding. It's better. I look better that way.
It's a snowstorm?
Yes.
Sorry about the missing photos. Anyway, and then Christian Bosin from Waze we're going to hear from. And I think we're going to have kind of an interesting mix here as we go back and forth from these different perspectives, brand perspectives, kind of one of the things that Bruce is just talking about, the new tripartite of we need search, we need social, but local is so critical to this. So we'll hear about this from a number of different perspectives. But let me just first start, say, with Warren and work this way. Just tell a little bit about what a day in a life is like for you these days and kind of what you're focused on. Then we'll come back and continue the discussion.
Warren Kay with Under Armour. So I run the media group at Under Armour, which is a new division that we've built through acquisitions. Under Armour about 18 months ago invested $700, $800 million in acquiring MapMyFitness, MyFitnessPal, and Endomondo, which were all health and fitness apps. And we've aggregated them together under a division that we call Connected Fitness. We have about 160 million registered users that have downloaded our apps and use them on a daily basis to track their nutrition, track their activity, health and fitness activity. And we're in the process of building and aggregating and consolidating these apps into a health and fitness network. So my role specifically is helping make money off of those acquisitions and kind of the revenue side of the Connected Fitness division. I have two primary areas of focus. One is, which sounds kind of interesting or different, but Under Armour is actually my biggest advertiser or my biggest client within my group. So we work very closely with the marketing group at Under Armour to figure out how to use our app, our consumer experience, to sell more shirts and shoes or more of our core apparel business. And then we also work with other marketers that we want to help integrate into our platform to help them drive leads or deliver value based on the health and fitness habits of our consumers.
Makes sense. Christian?
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Christian Bosin with Waze. I lead our East Coast sales team. Typical day for me right now is pretty chaotic. We're extremely busy and have been for the last year and a half. Just a ton of interest in what we're doing from a local perspective. So a typical day for me is right now doing a lot of interviewing to try and resource against all of that interest. But top of mind, I think, as we approach the marketplace, is really trying to educate people in our position as an app and in our position on the consumer journey. So I think a lot of the market sees as a digital, a mobile, an application, and they try and categorize us with other mobile plays they might be making. But when you think about it, we're in a part of the consumer journey which is much more or much better aligned to out of home. So the way we describe our business is billboards with a digital spine. So we're really taking that out-of-home message and bringing it into the car, layering it with digital targeting and all the pizzazz that we love. So education is really top of mind to make sure we're positioned correctly.
Great, thank you. John Paul.
So my day-to-day is leading a sales strategy within the company. It's fairly new, launched a year ago in November. It was really a culmination of kind of the history of the local business that lives inside ESPN. It is a combination of assets of our over 400 owned and affiliated radio stations across the country, our digital ecosystem, which includes local sites we launched about 6 years ago and have evolved to be really a team-focused local content strategy that literally drives the world's most downloaded sports app. It's about our locally sourced and curated social media, events, talent personalities, athletes in markets across the country within our company. So really it's taking all the assets that ESPN has and creates, because sports is inherently personal and very local. You can be an NFL fan, but I would argue that you're probably more a fan of a specific team than of the league in general, or a particular player. And that effort to better serve and deliver content for fans ultimately results in a more robust, relevant, and rich experience for brands. And my role is to find the right combination of assets, the right technology to put to use, and the right mix of all of those to deliver really smart ROI driving results and lift driving essentials to the brand.
That's great. And if I could put you on a spot just for a moment, I mean, John Paul was saying it's this kind of initiative within ESPN started up about a year ago, and it wasn't that long ago. Actually, we were sitting in a coffee shop near your office, and you were talking about how you moved from Chicago to New York. I mean, so you actually were a big founding force in that transition a year ago, starting up this whole local effort. You want to tell a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you. I have been in the local space, started as a local radio sales executive, coming out of MBA school, not because it paid more money, but because I was a firm believer in local marketing, and started selling local radio in Chicago, and ultimately grew to be part of the founding group that launched those local websites 6-7 years ago. And over that time frame, I've just dedicated a lot of time and energy to what is the right way for ESPN and sports in general to marry the power of sports and viewership and engagement to truly localized messaging, which is, it's hard to do. Mary Beth and I have talked at length about this over the year as well, that doing local can be really hard. And what are ways, especially when you're talking about some of these linear channels, whether it be broadcast television or broadcast radio, it can be challenging to do it. How can we do it in a way that's efficient and effective and smart, and I think in line with everything everybody needs, from a digital ecosystem, the social, the search, whatever it may be. And we really feel like we're off to a good start. We certainly haven't gotten there where we want to be yet, but I think the beginning has really come together nicely.
That's great. And actually, we're going to hear sort of a complementary perspective. ESPN starts from sort of a national media brand, localizing it, and then for Radha Subramaniam from iHeartMedia is going to talk about kind of bubbling up from local radio stations and then taking it national, and then taking it back down to local, leveraging digital and radio. So we'll get kind of some bookend perspectives here. But thank you, John Paul. And again, since we're missing your photos, take one more glimpse at John Paul's smiling face, and now Frank's smiling face. Please,
Thanks,
Frank.
Rick. I think picking up where John Paul left off is a perfect segue into what I do. Most mornings I feel like I have the best job in the world. I get to try to infuse emotion and passion into something that's not a very emotional or passionate space. We're trying to simply take some of the energy that people feel around sports, entertainment, but more so, again, it's putting some emotion and feeling and context into what is really not an emotional relationship. I think we are a collection, while we're a national brand, we have a relationship with 1 in 2 households in the U.S. as a stat we throw out a lot. If you think about between our bank, the retail bank that you know in New York at least, every corner, the credit card group, auto finance, mortgage, our private bank, commercial bank, small business, it's a truly national brand, but our job is to connect it locally. So you'll see later a lot of our strategy is very similar to what John Paul is doing, is looking locally. So obviously being part of the community, banking is the original sort of community environment. We're trying to bring more of that back into the space. Right.
Well, let's keep it with the two of you, John Paul and Frank. Tell us a little bit more about how you guys have been working together. And first, is it true? Is banking not an emotional thing? Who gets emotional about money?
Well, let me get right. It's the thing you're most passionate about, for sure. But on a day-to-day relationship, your decisions probably shouldn't be based on emotion, right? It's based on service, rates. We want to add that third layer of a relationship with your banker, kind of as much as I think you talked earlier about moving away from the in-branch experience. It's more of an advice center now, and no matter what, it's usually when you want help with something that we feel
Gotcha,
we have
right.
to be there for you.
So financial decisions shouldn't be based on emotions. That's where I went wrong. Okay, John Paul, help us.
I'll just
understand
say,
what's going
as it relates to how we've worked with Chase in this way, it's at the moment they are partners and sponsors in many venues. For those of you that have ever been to MSG here, you can see and feel what they're trying to do in their strategy. And what we're here to do is to help activate that and bring life to that outside of that space, or maybe those 3 hours around game time, is to bring that elsewhere and with the fans as they leave. So we've done partnerships with them here in New York around the Knicks and Rangers, as an extension of that. We're working with them in other markets, with other teams, other activations that just are smart ways to amplify what they're doing. Those investments and commitments they're making are long-term and strategic and large investments, and we're just here to help them maximize those decisions.
Is that working pretty well?
Yeah, we want to be part of the journey. We talk a lot about it in terms of also pain and pleasure, which is not really common bank terminology, but it's really just as a fan, how you get your ticket, how you experience it, where your pain points are from entry to exit to getting a ticket to discounts. It's an expensive venture, so we work very hard with all of our partners to initiate discounts and everything that sort of advantages a Chase customer through the experience.
Great, thank you. So if you do have questions, raise your hand, we'll get to those, but I want to also call on Warren and Christian. So let me start first with you, Christian. So Bruce Rogers was telling us that the three things to worry about now are social, search, and location. So Waze, I heard recently, was acquired by some search company or something. They now care about location as well. How does that match between what Waze brings to the search process? And I mean, some people are even saying that Google these days is more of an app company and around predictive analytics, like with Google now. How is that unfolding in the future, do you think? What Waze brings into the mix that Google already has as a set of assets around search, and now kind of telling you what you need before you even think to ask for it. How do you see that unfolding in the future with respect to the location data that you're bringing in that Bruce was talking about?
Yeah, I think it's a really great question. In terms of our sort of existence as part of the Google umbrella, we probably ask ourselves that every day, like what is tomorrow, what does next year look like? I think the really important thing that we think about at Waze is, when you think about local, it's about the context, and we've got very, very good and sophisticated in understanding the context of the user and the part of the day they're at. And the way I think about that at Waze is thinking about three wheres, right? So at Waze, we know where the user is. 100% of our users have to have their GPS turned on in order for the app to function. So we've got extremely accurate data on their location. We know where the user's going to because they told the app where they're driving to. So we know they're about to drive to Dunkin' Donuts. We know they're about to drive to Walmart. And we also know where they've been because we can see their driving history. We know that with a precision that's unprecedented in the marketplace. And I think that's really important to Google. And when you think about Google's mapping services with Google Maps, I dare say, and this is obviously slightly subjective, but Google probably owns two of the most popular mapping services in the marketplace today. So I think that kind of 1-2 punch is really important to Google. For right now and up until today, we've kept our business pretty independent as we've grown and kind of settled into the organization. And I think we're just at a tipping point now where we're starting to integrate more into the Google business and start to exchange data sets to really sort of enhance that seamless experience that we're already providing the user, right? So how can we enhance that seamless experience for advertisers and provide a more personalized experience to our partners such as Dunkin' Donuts and their consumer base?
That's great. Just out of curiosity, how many Waze users do we have here? Great.
Thanks everyone.
One thing about Waze, if you're going to use Waze, I heard a story about a group of people walking here from Penn Station and forgot to reset it from from car to pedestrian. So he did the car route, avoiding all the one-way. I mean, this group did the car route and avoiding all the one-ways. So Warren, at Under Armour, I want to pick up with a couple of the themes that we've talked about so far. So Under Armour is a huge company, and you're doing so many different things, and thank you for that overview. So we talked a little bit about that, and it's actually a relatively small group that you have overseeing a lot of kind of investments and activations and kind of deployments around this. And just from talking to a few other people at the brand level, I'm hearing that that's actually not uncommon, that there's sort of a few people kind of at the corporate level marshaling all these different resources, and then you've got kind of one of the themes, the questions that we wanted to look at was centralized versus decentralized kind of activities and initiatives at the brand level. So there's some centralized things that you manage at kind of the corporate level, but then within a brand like Under Armour and maybe JP, there's decentralized decision-making happening. How does that work? Is it totally seamless and utterly integrated so that what you do in a corporate matches the different divisional levels or the different local levels? What are some of the kind of dynamics going on there that are interesting to know about?
Yeah, I mean, we are a $6 billion brand. We've grown a lot over the last 20 years, but we feel like we're just at the forefront of the opportunity. So we are, a lot like what Christian was describing at Waze. We are spending a lot of time staffing and resourcing up our division because we don't have the resources and certainly not the skill sets that we need to be a really digitally focused company. When we acquired all of these apps, acquired a lot of resources, a lot of people through those acquisitions, but bringing them all together and really understanding how we can create a dynamic consumer experience. I loved what Bruce was talking about, how you can create marketing as a service, because that's what consumers expect. That's what we all expect today. And we do have this really rich data set about how people are tracking their health and their fitness activities. And what I hear more often than not is that people feel like that is somewhat of a one-way street, that they're giving us information, but we're not doing anything with it, or the response or the feedback or the data back isn't as valuable. And so that's what we're aimed to fix. So it's a small team, but we've brought in some great partners. We partner with IBM Watson as a good example, where they're helping us take all of our data set and start to provide predictive responses back to the consumer. As an example, if you don't sleep very well, you don't eat very well, then we know it's probably a bad idea to go exercise because you're a lot more prone to injury. So how can we use our partner in IBM to help provide that data and that analytics, and then use our advertising partners to help create offers and messages and value back to the consumer based on that full experience.
Now, how do you, one line you must look at is that kind of boundary condition between creepy, how much you know about a person, versus this is awesome, thank you. How do you kind of approach that line?
Right. In a few ways. First of all, this is all opted in. So you have to download the app, you have to approve, and you have to, in a lot of cases, put in the data yourself. MyFitnessPal is nutrition tracking. We have over 100 million users of that app that about 53% of them log their foods every single day. So they go into our apps and they submit that content for us, obviously very knowingly. And that's a big part of it. The other part is Under Armour was built off of trust with a consumer. And our CEO, founder, Kevin Plank, talks about this a lot, that trust is built in drops and lost in buckets. As someone who's I've joined less than a year ago, the bar for failure is really high. Right? I'm not going to be the guy that loses the trust of the consumer and does any harm to the consumer relationship. And that feeling is consistent across my team and across the organization. So we hold that consumer trust really high. And then the third and really most important part of it is if consumers are giving us this data, we have to do something with it. We don't deserve it if we're not going to earn it, if we're not going to deliver value back. And so that's really our focus, is how do we take the data that we capture through any one of our mechanisms, health or fitness, and provide a better experience, help consumers live a healthier life. And that's the bar. And it's a pretty high bar, right? That it's not something that we take lightly. And really understanding how we can take all of that and deliver real value back to the consumer, because frankly, it's not there today. We have a great roadmap, and I believe in the vision, but we have a lot of work to do to get there, because today, like I said earlier, it is a lot more of a one-way street.
Right. Let me just pause here for a second. Any questions or discussion points before I move on? Okay. Did I miss one? Oh, yes, please. Thanks.
Hi, thank you. My name is Sherry Friedman. I flew in this morning from Pittsburgh. I'm from a company called Ryza. I'm curious, especially since a lot of you guys overlap with sales. It's not clear to me if the sales teams report directly to you or you just collaborate closely with them, but how you see the makeup of those teams changing. Like, what does it take to be a successful salesperson selling this new type of media or traditional old media just in a new reincarnated form? How do you see leadership in those teams changing? What kind of skill sets are evolving? What does that look like at your organization?
I'd ask Frank to answer that to start. And from your perspective, I'd love to hear that.
That's a great question. I thought it was at least relevant. Well, I see it a lot from the other side of the fence because we get pitched a lot, right, on how, on either whether it's properties, activities, engagements, communities. So I think John Paul brings up a great point. A lot of it is really understanding what we're trying to do, right, and customizing to the, leaving off where we're picking up from Warren is we know a lot about customers, and we're trying to use that to be helpful rather than, I think you talked about sort of that creepy line of where that data is too much, but offer real insights, be beneficial, not be the classic interrupter and get away from the, I think somebody used this morning, the direct mail example of, that's still a huge portion of the firm's budget, and there's some data somewhere that says that works, but I doubt anybody in this room has ever responded to any of that. So maybe a long-winded answer to your question, but I think it's really understanding sort of the local nature of what we're trying to do and problem solve versus just sort of the classic pitch on activity.
I would say it's a delicate balance of being able to communicate the assets and objectives and opportunities that exist within whatever it is you're trying to have a conversation about, with questions and listening and understanding, and problem solving is a great way to put it. If you're a really good seller within ESPN, you're solving brands' problems.
Yeah, Christian or Warren, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, sort of for me, it's all a bit about building partnerships. We tend to abuse the word partner, amongst other words in the industry right now. But, I can talk to Dunkin' Donuts as I lead that business. I'm happy to have John in the audience because when I go up to Canton, I feel part of Dunkin' Donuts. I don't feel like I'm representing Waze. I'm truly welcomed into their business. We consult on a daily basis about how we can create a personalized experience that's really innovative for the consumer and relevant. So I feel part of the family, and that's just super important. So we look for people that are beyond media sales, that really have the ability to consult on business and build those partnerships, not just for today, but for tomorrow and next year.
Is that, for Warren, is that partnership, and it's like Christian's saying he feels like Waze is part of Dunkin' brands. Is that how you feel about your vendors, executing around MarTech and location and local kind of things, or what's a good way to do business together? It's
across the board. The number of solicitations that a marketer gets, as you can probably relate to, is just, it's amazing. And content marketing and some of the MarTech tools have made that very low barrier, very scalable. And so the flood of emails and the number of calls and the number of threats and the number of across the board solicitations is pretty amazing. And I've sat on both sides of the equation, and so I know it from a salesperson's perspective. At my heart, I'm a salesperson, and so I know the challenges that are incurred, or the difficulties of selling. And really, the issue is that there are so low barriers, and there are, even in the job itself, it's fairly easy to get a sales job. And the perception is you just have to have high activity and confidence, and you can sell. So I get a lot of calls and a lot of emails from people that are not very well educated about my business. It's pretty classic, and I have 2 first names or 2 last names, depending on how you want to look at it. And my last name is actually the first name of a lot of women. And so I get emails all the time to Mrs. Warren or to Kay, and it's amazing that someone is hired, is paid, a company exists that will employ a salesperson that can't even get my name right. But
So the key thing
it
is
is what
you
it
were
is.
buying that stuff?
Right, exactly.
Does it work?
Yeah, exactly. So it's tough, but we're living in as Bruce was talking about earlier, we're living in a transformational time, and our industry is transforming.
So you mentioned content and transformational, and going back to Bruce again, location is so critical to all of this. So we love local, but local is morphing into this spectrum of local location. And Christian, what is Waze as an advertising platform? It's impressions, but it's also kind of the inventory type is native advertising, contextual advertising. I mean, how do you position those Waze as an advertising platform? What are the kind of ROI you're looking for? And I think you even just did a recent study looking at this.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good question. And again, it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning about education. So this is, again, another area that we spend a lot of time talking about. In the context of Waze, and thanks again to all the people who are currently using it, but for people who don't use Waze, it's really interesting when you think about the GPS category, because traditionally we've used GPS because we don't know where we're going, right? You use it on that first journey you make, the second journey, but by the third or fourth journey you put that handheld unit back in your dashboard because you know that road system. Waze is different because we're saving people time in real time. So people use Waze not because they don't know where they're going, they use the application because they do know where they're going, they just want to make that journey as quickly as possible. So what we find of our 14 million active users here in the US, around 75% of that user base are using Waze as a commuting utility to drive from home to work in the morning and from work to home in the evening. So that's an enormous opportunity for brands to integrate into that user's life as they go about their daily routine. So that's really our starting point, and we see that user base driving with Waze for about 9 hours a month. So when we think about how brands should look at performance on Waze, we all want to drive in-store traffic. I think whatever the business I've spoken to with a couple of categories like entertainment, maybe as an aside, people want to drive in-store traffic. That's really the golden egg here, right? And in the currency we deal with in impressions, in that native environment, it's like, well, what did it cost me to drive that user into the store? So we take our investment, we divide it by, in our case, the amount of navigations we drove, and we come to some kind of cost mechanic. And that's really important. Like I said, it's the currency we deal in. But if we just look at that, we're ignoring this amazing brand story that we also deliver. So using Duncan again as an example, we saw their organic searches in Waze raised by 100% as a result of putting their locations onto the map. So that's organic, not connected to the ads themselves. So we're truly able to influence consumer behavior as a result of having someone's brick and mortar locations on the map, which I think is really incredible and much more compelling than how much it costs me per person to get to store. So for us, it's really a balance between brand and that performance measure.
That makes sense. We have less than a minute left, but any last minute thoughts from the panel before we close this out?
The only thing I'd say is you hit on it earlier, and hopefully the theme will resonate throughout the day, is this conflict between centralized and decentralized strategies. It's often overlooked. It is part of what makes local at scale very difficult, is there are a lot of parties that have a voice.
Right.
And making sure that everybody is aligned is so crucial. And
Right.
so that conversation, at least as it relates to us, has to happen so early on in the process. In the idea making, the how it's going to execute, the areas of our properties that you're going to invest in that match what your local constituents and affiliates are needing. There's just a lot of people and voices that are in there. And one of the things I'm hoping to get out of today is that discussion of how people are approaching that. How do they,
Right.
set that vision? How do they create an atmosphere that can get everybody aligned to go and accomplish something, to get the full benefit of everything that is at stake within the network.
Cool. Any other burning thoughts? Gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate it.